Andrew Abbott showed exactly why he is an all-star and may be making a case for the legitimate ace of the Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I've been podcasting about this team for 7 seasons now, and I'm glad that you're alongside me today. On today's show, we are going to get in later on with an MLB Draft expert from Locked On, Jeff Ellis. He is going to preview a little bit of this draft and say why he believes the Reds should go pitcher at the first pick. I know. You're going to be excited about that one. That's coming up later on in today's show. In a few minutes, I talked to Sully from Locked On MLB, and he says the Reds don't need a big swing because the Reds are pretty close. He'll tell us why in just a few minutes. But I want to begin today's episode by discussing this most recent outing by Andrew Abbott and why he might actually be taking over as the ace of this staff, at least currently. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. All right, Reds win 7-2 over the Marlins on Wednesday night, and it was all about Andrew Abbott. The lineup got right, and they strung hits together early. Kind of had a couple of RBI doubles from Elly De La Cruz. He had a great home run from Noel Marte, and a nice home run from Will Benson, but Andrew Abbott was the story. He was placed on the All-Star team on Tuesday night as all the celebration was happening in the dugout and things like that. He's replacing an injured pitcher there for the National League, but he showed why he deserved the initial appointment. He showed why he deserved to not be oh yeah, that guy, bring him along too. He got his ERA down under 2 once again after Wednesday night's performance because he almost threw 8 shutout innings. And I love that Tito brought him back out in the 8th. That was a great decision by Terry Francona to see if he can continue this because we have seen nothing but confidence from Andrew Abbott this season. Even in a couple of starts where he hasn't had his best stuff, you haven't seen him look uncomfortable on the mound. The mound is a lazy boy to Andrew Abbott right now. He is just so comfortable up there. All of his pitches, in and out of the zone, up and down, side to side, doesn't matter. He knows exactly where they're going. He's commanding them perfectly, and he is dominating opposing lineups. I get it. The Marlins are not a top-tier lineup in the major leagues, although statistically, if you look at some different categories, they are better than the Reds. I digress. He was able to shut them down very succinctly Wednesday night, and I was very impressed by that. But more so is the fact that he is really stepping up big as the Reds' ace right now, and I think that there's an argument to be had about how important that is. Hunter Greene took a trip out to Arizona, not even really to do a rehab program, it's more just to heal and to figure out what's going on, because all of the tests that they continue to do on his injured groin are that, yeah, it's a mild strain, but he continues to feel discomfort. He continues to feel tightness, albeit everything is saying that nothing has gotten worse. It's just nothing is getting better, and he's not able to pitch. So while he has been out, not only has his spot in the rotation needed to be filled, and hopefully Chase Burns continues to do a good job of that, but his role as best pitcher and stopper for this team was needed to be replaced, and Andrew Abbott has done that perfectly. He is the guy. The Reds just got done losing 4 games in a row, and here comes Andrew Abbott, and you're just like, man, he's coming off of a tough start, really hoping that he bounces back because the Reds as a whole need to bounce back, and that's exactly what happened, and he was a big reason as to why. The way that he pitched on Wednesday night was just so confident, and it's clear that, post-game interviews and things like that, whenever reporters talk with Andrew Abbott, it is clear that Abbott has the kind of mindset, the kind of mentality to be an ace. I don't necessarily know that he lingers on any one pitch, let alone one inning, one outing, one start, 1 month, 1 year. I think that the next pitch that he throws is as if he's never thrown a pitch before. His mind is so clear in the way that he is able to approach each and every start. That's something we talked a lot about with Graham Ashcraft and a big hurdle of his. And in some cases, I still think it's a hurdle that he is dealing with on a, appearance by appearance basis. But it was one of the reasons that it didn't seem as though he was going to work as a starter, because certain things would happen at certain points in the game, and it seemed as though that's when the wheels fell off for Graham Ashcraft. Things will happen to Andrew Abbott. Andrew Abbott will give up an extra base hit. Andrew Abbott will walk a guy. Andrew Abbott will give up a home run. But what happens next is that he buckles down and he stops any sort of production from continuing from the opposing lineup. It is a very impressive thing to watch him pitch, albeit he does not have the sort of stuff that you hear people writing about, like, nobody's going to name his changeup a different thing. They had Devin Williams when he was on the Brewers, and now he's on the Yankees, and his changeup is called the Airbender. Nobody's going to name a pitch that Andrew Abbott has. But Andrew Abbott is going to consistently be this type of a pitcher for the Reds because he's so pitch efficient. He was able to get in and out of jams. There were a few jams that he faced against the Marlins. There were some times where they had base runners. I mean, Agustin Ramirez had a double early on in this game, and it looked as if that was going to be an inning of struggle for him. But he was able to go bam, 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 3 straight flyouts, get out of that inning, and he didn't throw that many pitches. I think the most pitches that he threw in one inning was like 15. That's efficiency. And that's what I've been so in love with, watching him pitch all throughout the first half of the season and past the actual first half, but leading into the All-Star break. He's not going to make another start. I was trying to think if I made the right statement there, but he's not going to make another start until after the All-Star break. I do believe that there's a chance he pitches in the All-Star game, so I would love to see that. And Terry Francona's even told him, like, we're going to reassess everything, but we're not going to, like, hold you back because you pitched in the All-Star game. So don't worry, just go have fun. I love that. I think that Terry Francona, the effects that he is having on this roster are clear. And I get it, a lot of people were really worried about the 4-game losing streak, but again, the Reds cut it off at that. That is still the longest losing streak that the Reds have had all year long, is 4 games. They've done it 3 times now, but they've offset that with 3 winning streaks of 4 games or more. Or they've offset that, with 5 winning streaks of 4 games or more this season. That's why they're about 500 still. They're still in a spot where they can compete, and Andrew Abbott is a big, big reason why, because he has been this team's ace in lieu of its ace in Hunter Green. Because hopefully Hunter Green comes back soon, but all reports are there is no timeline for him. So as long as he is out, the Reds are without their ace. But are they? Because Andrew Abbott has been that guy. And like I said, the Reds are close. The Reds don't need to go out there and trade for Aaron Judge or something like that to be a playoff team, just as Sully confirms next. The best way to get down to the ballpark is with Game Time. I use Game Time all the time, whether I'm in Cincinnati or I'm in another city following the Reds around to a new ballpark and trying to check one off my list. Game Time makes it easy. They've got great last-minute deals, so if you go down to your favorite spot, get comfortable, and you find a good deal close to first pitch, or if you're exploring, you can see exactly the view from your seat on their app. They're so very good with the information. They give you all of your pricing up front. You're not going to be surprised by fees, and they've got the last-minute deals at the lowest prices guaranteed. That's the Game Time app. Download it today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. So go get yourself some low prices. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's on Game Time. Like I said, last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. If you aren't an everydayer of Locked On Reds, make sure you hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them out there.
I picked the Cincinnati Reds to win the National League Central this year. partly because I didn't believe in the Cubs.
Right.
I thought the Cubs were overrated, and I have a little bit of egg on my face on that because the Cubs have, as of this, they're been very, very good. Now the Brewers are breathing right down their neck, and the Brewers just manhandled the Dodgers with a walk-off win today. They have a 4-game winning streak, and they are breathing down the neck of the Chicago Cubs. And as of this recording, the Reds have a winning record, which means they'd be running away with a playoff spot if they were in the American League. They are on the outside looking in, but it's 3 games back in the loss column of San Francisco right now. And the teams that they have to leapfrog, St. Louis, vulnerable. Padres, oddly vulnerable. I really thought they'd be better this year. And, of course, the Giants are one of the most unpredictable teams in baseball. The Reds could still be a playoff team. I think what the Reds need to do come trade deadline is they need to acquire a major league hitter, even if it's someone who is contract expiring, will cost them virtually nothing. Get at least 1 or 2 mediocre hitters in their lineup right now, because, and this is an adage that I think Confucius once said, mediocre is better than bad. And when you have a bad player in your lineup and you replace them with a mediocre, by definition, you have upgraded. And right. I would say if there was any team that is just basically trying to dump players that they're going to probably non-tender or just not offer, or contracts are expiring, give them a call, offer them a plate of spaghetti with chili on top of it, and see if they'll accept that as a trade. Because I look at this lineup and I see there are massive holes in it, and I look at their pitching staff, and while it's not Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz, it's capable of excellent things. Yep. And you happen to have a Hall of Famer as your manager, some decent arms, put some mediocre bats in that lineup, and cross your fingers that the Giants fall on their face.
Yeah, and there's a couple of different guys that I've been looking at here recently. The number one guy that I'm thinking of is a guy they faced here these last couple of days, and Dane Myers with the Marlins. I'm also thinking of Ramon Laureano from Baltimore. I mean, he's actually on an expiring contract, so it should be easier to get than Dane Myers. But yeah, that's all they need. They don't need to go out and get Aaron Judge. They don't need to go out and get Stan Musial. They just need to get some okay bats and put.
I picture they're going to get a bunch of shovels and dig up Stan.
Well, yeah, there's definitely some other guys they could look at to do that too. But right. I really feel like this team is an 84-win team is currently constructed. Now, that's not a playoff team in the National League, but that means that they are within striking distance if they make the right moves. And on top of that, and I think even maybe a little bit more, if they could go find that top of the bullpen type guy. Like, I really like what Emilio Pagan has done so far this season, but I would like this bullpen a lot more if there was somebody over top of him and you had, closer, Pagan, Santillan. I would feel a lot better about that, because I kind of feel like this bullpen has been exposed recently.
I want Reds fans to think about this for a little bit. Why sometimes getting that dumpster dive move can make a huge difference. It's very rarely that the trade that gets all the attention at the deadline is the one that puts a team over the top. The big deal in 2018 was Los Angeles acquiring Manny Machado. Mm-hmm. Who was the World Series MVP? Steve Pearce, who the Red Sox got for a cup of legal seafood clam chowder from Toronto. And he went on and had that fabulous World Series. Think about Marco Scutaro. When the Giants acquired him, was anyone saying, oh my God, the Marco Scutaro era has begun in San Francisco?
Right.
But no, he was the National League Championship Series MVP. By the way, when the Giants won the NLCS in 2010, the MVP was not Buster Posey, Madison Bumgarner. Tim Lincecum. It was Cody Ross, who they acquired, I believe, from the Reds, but he was no, that wasn't. Either way, he was dumped, and it cost them. I think it was a waiver move they made. Think about when the Braves, who are in a hell of a lot worse shape than the Reds are right now, went out and acquired Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler, and Jock Peterson. Now, believe me, when those trades were made, no one yelled, "Stop the presses!" But all three of those players, I mean, Rosario was the NLCS MVP, Soler was the World Series MVP, and Jock Peterson got huge hits. Sometimes what happens, you're not asking a player to be a superstar for a season. You're asking a player, be pretty good for a couple of months. And also keep in mind, and I know we're only supposed to think of players as parts of an algorithm and stats and this, that, and the other thing, but you get the sense for each one of those players, Pierce, Soler, Rosario, Scudero, Ross, who were all in a situation where they were floating down the river of suck for a season. And suddenly you're like, oh, I get to play in the playoffs this year.
Everything clicks. Everything clicks.
Yeah, like, there's a little bit of enthusiasm. I remember when the St. Louis Cardinals in 2000, Mark McGwire got hurt and was reduced to a bench player, basically. He was basically reduced to a pinch hitter. And the Cardinals acquired Will Clark. And Will Clark was long away from his being an MVP candidate for San Francisco at that point. And he put on a show for 2 months where he suddenly became Rogers Hornsby for just a couple of months. Reds fans, if you get a guy who's on an expiring contract who says, wait a minute, I got a new lease on this season and maybe can impress someone to go cha-ching in the offseason. If you get a couple of players like that, like the way Soler did with Atlanta in 2021, who then cashed in with Miami the next year, I think I got that math right on that. Either way, it was, that's what the Reds should be doing. Yes. It should be saying, what player can we get that could spark? Because you just need players who are okay in your lineup, and you have a chance to overtake the Giants, who are not. This is not the Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, Buster Posey Giants. This is believe me, I'm in the Bay Area right now. I'm seeing them up close. This is a weird team.
Right. And the Reds have the tiebreaker over the Giants too. So if it comes to it, they can, they finish with the same record. The Reds get in over the Giants. I'm with you, Sully. And that's the thing that we're all sort of holding our breath here when it comes to the trade deadline. Will Nick Krall in this front office be aggressive enough to make the necessary moves? And not just saying that, they got to trade, guys that they don't want to lose for hopefuls. Like you said, like they can take advantage of some deals that it doesn't feel like they will have to break the bank, or as everybody's worried about, mortgaging the future. It's everybody's favorite term when it comes to the trade deadline. They're not going to have to do that to get better. And this team doesn't need like a new roster. I think they go on a 4-game losing streak and people think, oh my gosh, see, it's not working. We're wasting Ellie De La Cruz and we're wasting all of this other stuff. It's like, calm down. Like they get a 7-2 win over the Marlins, back above 500. Let's get back on this train right here and make some trades.
So don't panic, Reds fans. Just make a couple of smart moves, and there we go. You see, exactly. I mean, this is a little message of hope from your pal Sully.
I appreciate Sully's perspective, and I think that it's important to get an outsider's perspective every so often on our Red Legs, because it's easy for us to kind of get stuck in a bubble of, oh my gosh, and that's what I've seen these last couple of days, people going a little bit crazy with what the Reds are doing, albeit they've driven everybody crazy. It's not as if we're just fabricating crazy thoughts here, but still, I think that the Reds are going to be just fine, especially if they go make some moves Love to see that. But speaking of making moves, the draft is coming up on Sunday, and I've got a segment coming up. I got a full draft preview coming on Saturday with Jeff Ellis, our MLB draft expert for Locked On. But he's going to tell us why in just a few moments he believes the Reds should go for a pitcher in the first round. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system, and it helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. If you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate, Open Phone can solve that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. There's no more, who's handling this? Open Phone is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Well, the Cincinnati Reds have the #9 pick in this year's draft, in the first round at least. Well, plenty of rounds after that as well. And I kind of wanted to break everything down before we get to Sunday. So to do that, I brought in our draft expert for Locked On, Jeff Ellis. He's also one half of Locked On Guardians. I know Jeff's going to be like live for all of the draft, which I think includes something like 14 hours on Monday. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But you're going to want to check out his live stream. And we have the Locked On MLB Draft Night happening Sunday night, where we will recap day 1 of the MLB Draft with the best picks, the riskier picks, and everything in between. But I wanted to take a focus for a minute on the Reds, because at number 9, I've read a lot of different mock drafts. I've read a lot of different draft profiles. I've read a lot of different opinions. I've seen a lot of big boards and all this other stuff. And everything is telling me, Jeff, that the Reds have a lot of different ways they can go about this. So I'm curious, from your perspective and understanding that obviously Ethan Holiday is not going to make it to number 9, but what is the best case scenario for the Reds at number 9?
Well, first, I think they're in a bit of a best case scenario, because the lack of talent, elite talent, I should say, in this draft means that, like, the fact that they hit the lotto last year and didn't this year, like, it's a much better situation. Like, they would be much worse if they had stayed where they were last year and not moved up this year. So I'll start with that, like, just some overall perspective. For me at that selection, I know fans won't like this, but I prefer a lot of the pitchers in this class. I really think that's the college pitcher group is the strength of the class. The players I feel confident will be off the board at that point in the draft are Cade Anderson and Ethan Holiday. Beyond those two, I mean, I feel like everyone kind of doesn't know anything. Like, we're hearing so many different things. If you want to go hitter, Avia Arqueta is probably the guy I would look at. The other guys I like are more down the board to most. Like, I think Andrew Fisher and Devin Taylor are really interesting. If they wanted to go with a prep talent, JoJo Parker or Eli Willits are the ones I would look at there. So you're looking more shortstop. And then, pitchers, if you don't care about risk, it's Seth Hernandez. I just think at some point we have to have that discussion with the prep player that every prep pitcher almost gets hurt. So you only getting 4 years instead of 6. And that's always my rationale why I'm lower on prep players, is you're not going to get 6 years of team control. You're probably only going to end up with the equivalent of 4 in most situations. So I'm a big Jamie Arnold guy. I still have him number 1 because he's the only guy who has dominated at a top level 2 years in a row. Anderson was 1 year, Witherspoon was 1 year. A lot of those kind of upper arms didn't do it for multiple years. So I like him, but if you want a hitter, it's Arquette. I think at that point is the guy you would hope for, just because of the power potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 6'5", 220. I know that people are saying that he could stick at shortstop, but he could easily slot into third base if that's something that a team decides to go with as well. Let's stick with Jamie Arnold for just a minute, because I talked a little bit about him on a recent episode of Locked On Reds, and the scouting report makes me think Nick Lodolo, low three-quarter arm slot. He's got a fastball, a slider, and he's got a changeup he needs to work on with command. That's where Nick Lodolo was whenever the Reds drafted him. He was a 3-pitch pitcher, but the changeup really wasn't a weapon for him yet. He's developed it into a weapon, but ultimately what I read about Jamie Arnold has me excited that if he were to be that pick, I think the Reds are making a good pick and a guy that probably could move through the system just as fast as Burns, Louder, and Matt McLain have here recently.
Yeah, I think I would go plus Lodolo just because I feel like his sweeper is a stronger pitch than Lodolo's secondary offering. So I think he's, it's a 60-65 grade pitch, I think, as it projects out. So you're looking at maybe some more swing and miss potential, more of an ability to get out guys. So I was a little bit lower on Lodolo at the time, but that was also because of where he was pitching. And I want to say he was draft eligible sophomore. I could be wrong. That's just top of my head. I can't remember if that's true or not. But with Arnold, he's got that sweeper. It's a really strong secondary pitch. So I think he gives you that. But I do think he's pitched for 3 years at Florida State, and he's going to be a guy you should have move quickly.
Let's talk about that for just a little bit. The 3 years at Florida State thing, because I know you and I have had these conversations here recently as well. Like, there's a lot of players that have transferred a ton, and the way that NCAA transfer portals work in baseball are far different than they are in football and basketball. But still, that means that guys have moved around a lot, and there's a lot of different players playing at a lot of different schools. How do you value a guy like a Jamie Arnold who has stuck at one spot as opposed to a pitcher that may have pitched in 3 different schools in 3 different years?
Yeah, it's interesting talking to teams in the past because there's positives to both, honestly. Like if a guy has bounced around a bunch, then a team's like, well, no bad traits have likely set in, and there's maybe more growth potential because that player has not got a consistent coaching approach. In the case of Arnold, Florida State has been, it's a program. Like there's not a great program in general right now, outside of maybe Wake and to a lesser degree Tennessee, at developing pitching. Like we have seen the last 2 years, it's been kind of a wasteland of college pitching, and teams are looking for traits. They're not looking at necessarily performance. They're not looking at, velocity. They're looking for traits and things they think that they can fix and improve to make a guy level up, as it were. So when you're looking at someone like Jamie Arnold, I don't know, like if being at one place is as much the thing as it is that he has pitched at such a high level, and specifically the last 2 years. And I know certain teams that almost value the sophomore year data more than the junior year data. And Arnold was better in the sophomore year. And the reason they do that is because a guy in the sophomore year is younger, facing older competition. And I know you're saying it's only a year, but a year does matter. It's a year more of coaching. It's a year more of body development. And there are teams that will look at a dominant sophomore year and not care if a guy slips up as much as junior, because they're looking at, okay, this was actually kind of the harder year part of it. The Guardians have done this with a few guys. Hunter Gaddis comes to mind off the top of my head, but we've seen it with the Nationals at points as well, where they kind of sometimes will value, it feels like, the sophomore year more than the junior year. Toronto too. Those are the 3 teams that come to mind. So, when you're looking at a player who put up that level of performance when they were, not the most physically developed guy or not the oldest guy, that kind of stands out for orgs. It's just one of those things that it's not like a huge deal, but they're looking for every reason, right? You're looking for every minor detail, and that's something that can come up.
That'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for making us part of your day. If you are not an everydayer and you got to this point, you might as well hit that subscribe button anyway. So much content coming for you all throughout the rest of the season. I mean, we're heading into draft. We're heading into trade deadline stuff. So much is coming for you. Locked On Reds is going to be on every single bit of it because we are Locked On Reds every single day.